Great, thank you very much. Oh, it's so wonderful to see it all going live. So yeah, thank you for having us today. So Mass Observation is a national archive that's been collecting narrative material on everyday life in Britain since 1937. We're going to introduce you to the work of Mass Observation in the 1990s, but also we wanted to take this opportunity today to introduce you to our most contemporary work, capturing people's everyday lived experiences during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, Mass Observation in the 1990s was based within the walls of the University of Sussex Library and formed part of its special collections. Professor Dorothy Sheridan, pictured here on the right, led the project through this decade. Dorothy had worked with Tom Harrison, who's pictured up at the top there on the left. He was one of Mass Observation's founders and came to Sussex with the archive in the late 1970s. Dorothy catalogued the majority of material collected by Mass Observation during the Second World War and therefore had a long-standing relationship with its work. She worked with Professor David Pocock, an anthropologist at Sussex, to launch the Mass Observation project in 1981, and they worked together until his retirement in the early 1990s. One of the first directives that developed under Dorothy's leadership was on close relationships, and this showed a change of approach to the questions with a greater emphasis on life story narrative. Correspondents were encouraged to respond to topics which might be described as both personal and public. And you can see here a selection of directive themes covered in the 90s. These encouraged people to share their thoughts and experiences on personal, social and political events. They were encouraged to be reflective, to look back across their life course, and to do this in relation to their family, friends and acquaintances.
So rather than trying to recruit writers through direct methods, the writing panel has always been self-selecting, and the focus of the project is on voluntary, self-motivated participation. In the first years of operation, the Mass Observation team tried to spread the word in numerous national and local newspapers to recruit writers to the newly launched project. During the 90s, applications came from people who found out about the project during attention in the press, radio and from book publications using material from Mass Observation's activities during the Second World War. Two diaries which are often cited as inspiration for inquiring about joining the project are Nella Last War and Dorothy Sheridan's edited wartime diary of Naomi Mitchison, among you taking notes. In this slide, you can see a letter from a 21-year-old who has heard about Mass Observation while studying A-level sociology at school and is subsequently reminded about the project whilst following a feature on the TV. Correspondents have cited various reasons for participating in the project. Many see the project as a chance to record their personal history and observations for posterity, but also to participate in active current research. For some, writing for MO feels like a worthwhile form of social research compared to other responses. This is because it's relatively unrestricted and closer to a form of stream of consciousness rather than market research. Here, writer F1373 explains that when I die, I want to leave things. I don't want to just pop my clogs and they'll say, well, there she goes, cheerio, goodbye. I want them to say, well, she wrote a book. She did writing for Mass Observation. She knitted me a lovely bedspread. Things like that, you know. I won't be able to leave any cooking behind, will I? But you know, I like to think there's going to be a lot of me left, really. And H2359 says, for me, there is something important about being one in 1,000 plus contributors who are writing regularly and responding to the same topic all over the country. It feels like a mass movement.
So looking at its research value, during the 1990s, directive responses were used for research, teaching and community engagement. Open days at the archive attracted interested members of the local community as well as students and academics. They were keen to view the material and hear about the collections. As interest grew, study days were designed with a programme of talks and discussions to enable more in-depth engagement with selected material from across the archives. These eventually became accredited evening courses, supporting the university's lifelong learning provision. Mass observation material became integral to many undergraduate and postgraduate courses across disciplines during this decade, and the collaborative work between Dorothy and academic colleagues provided rich learning experiences using this unique collection. So coming on to today, mass observation remained active beyond the 1990s, and today you'll find us at the Keep, pictured here, which is a purpose-built state-of-the-art archive research centre in Falmer, just opposite the University of Sussex campus. And here we provide access to the archive for research, learning and teaching, alongside our partners from East Sussex and Brighton and Hove. And the Keep is also the place where we mail out the directives to our current panel of writers. That is, of course, until the pandemic hit and we all had to leave the building.
So when COVID emerged and the country went into lockdown, and just before, as Kirsty said, we left our offices, we sent out some correspondence to our observers requesting that they documented their experiences as the events unfolded. We were particularly worried that we might not be able to communicate with them during this time. We didn't know how it was going to go, so we wanted them to keep mindful to send things into mass observation. But our first letter to them included questions like, have you or others that you know been affected by the virus? Have you been ill? Have you been doing anything to protect yourself or others from the virus? Have you self-isolated? Have you changed your behaviours? And what do you think about the UK government's response to the pandemic? We also asked them to submit diaries, and many of them did, and some of them are still recording the pandemic now, and they're still arriving with us. We also had an influx of new writers wanting to join the project, and we received over 500 applications to join. And during the time, our active panel, those who were responding to directives, increased from 400 to 700 writers. During the pandemic, as it turned out, we didn't have problems communicating with our observers. We could regularly send out directives to them, and we sent out directives in the spring, summer and autumn, and these asked varied questions about the pandemic experience. There were questions about routine, time, hygiene, well-being and also recycling. But we've also issued a directive recently in spring 2021 on the vaccine programme and how people see this is going. So we've been overwhelmed by the interest and have generated a substantial collection of narrative material which will be of interest to researchers across the disciplines, both now and in many years to come. The format includes in-depth diaries written continuously and also one-off single-day diaries which were sent to us in response to our annual 12th of May diary initiative. Also the responses to the 4 directives and also other collections donated by organisations documenting COVID, so organisations such as the E3A. Researchers have the opportunity to explore the material thematically or longitudinally. You can follow a particular writer across the pandemic or even further back if they've been long-term writers. So it would be possible to view the writing of someone who responded in the 1990s to alongside their COVID response right now.
And here are 2 extracts. In response to the spring directive, M5645 writes, I feel like I've lost my brain again. I wanted to cry after I finished work. There's so much. And meanwhile, people are stressing about their library card PIN numbers. Of course they are. I was furious with Kay last night because of how he put the duvet on the bed. It doesn't matter, but your brain seems to latch onto something and you get mad about that because what else can you do? And here we have an extract from a 13-year-old who submitted their day diary for the 12th of May project. The mood here is great. Even though everyone is gloomy and bored, people have been great at cheering each other up. I'm currently working on a video of my friends and I look a bit stupid, which should make people laugh when it's finished. Every Thursday at 8 o'clock, everyone goes onto the street and claps for the NHS, National Health Service. It's awesome hearing all the claps from nearly everyone in the neighbourhood. It's also a good chance to say hi to neighbours from 2 metres away. People have also been putting drawings of rainbows in their windows to support the NHS nurses and doctors. It's cool how everyone in the country feels so united. Now, this slide is intended to highlight the spread of submissions we received to the archive, and this is related specifically to our 12th of May day diary call. So in 2020, we saw over 5,000 people submitting these types of diaries from across the UK and Ireland. And this was phenomenal because usually our annual response is in the hundreds. We even received diaries from Europe, America and Australia. And as a result, we ended up recruiting a short-term cataloguing post to support with the processing of these and making them available. The 12th of May is, of course, next week, so we would be thrilled if you could take part this year, and there'll be further information on this on our website.
So just before we come to an end, we wanted to mention the opportunities for collaborating with us and generating a directive relating to your research. The majority of the directives are the result of non-commercial paid commissions in collaboration with academic researchers across the disciplines. There's usually a fee which usually forms part of a funding application, and we've supported projects of varying sizes from postdoc research to larger ESRC grants. On our website, you can see a list of all the previous directives and also some information about working with us. But here on this slide, there is a word cloud of some of the themes that we have issued in recent years. The narrative responses that come in response to a directive questionnaire are available in our reading rooms at the Keep, and where possible, we can make electronic responses available to the commissioning researcher. Again, this data can be used alongside the 90s material published today by Adam Matthews Digital. And we also have an online database which researchers can use to find out more about the biographical metadata of our writers and the responses to the current directives. And this database can be navigated to from our main webpage, which we've listed here on this slide. But if you have any questions about mass observation or the mass observation project, or just want to get in touch with us generally, our contact details are here.